Cassandra was a quiet child who grew up under the watchful care of her grandmother, Agnes. From the time she could walk, she trailed behind Agnes as the older woman meticulously tended her rose garden or polished her treasured porcelain. The house was small and modest, but every corner held a piece of family history. Cassandra's parents traveled often for work, leaving her in Agnes's warm embrace for weeks on end. During those formative years, her grandmother's heirlooms became an anchor, solid evidence that her family's legacy endured through hardship and triumph alike. When Cassandra was older, she marveled at Agnes's stories about each antique vase, ornate locket, or hand-carved music box. She especially admired a pocket watch engraved with the initials of her great-grandfather. Every item told a tale of perseverance, love, and sometimes heartbreak. These stories were more than bedtime anecdotes. They were her heritage. By the time Cassandra reached adulthood, Agnes's health had begun to decline. Still, the elderly woman insisted on showing her granddaughter how to care for each heirloom. Cassandra promised she would never let the objects, and the memories they carried, fall into the wrong hands. It was a promise that would soon be tested beyond her imagination. After Agnes passed away, Cassandra inherited all the heirlooms her grandmother had so carefully preserved. Agnes's small bungalow went to Cassandra's parents, but the collection of antique items was entrusted solely to her. She was deeply touched by this gesture. It felt like Agnes had given her not only priceless items, but also the family's essence. Cassandra carefully packed them in soft cloth and stored them in a chest at the foot of her bed, believing they were safe there. Her husband, Stephen, appeared sympathetic at first. He offered a shoulder to cry on, listened to her recall favorite memories with Agnes, and even helped organize the funeral. Cassandra, who valued thoughtfulness, felt a renewed sense of appreciation for him. Though they had occasional disagreements, mostly about finances and Stephen's desire for lavish purchases, Cassandra believed they could weather any storm as long as they communicated. But there was a certain glint in Stephen's eyes whenever he touched the antiques that made Cassandra uneasy. She dismissed her suspicions as paranoia heightened by grief. In time, she would come to realize that her instincts were right. Stephen's interest in those heirlooms went far beyond a sentimental appreciation of Agnes's memory. In the months following Agnes's funeral, Cassandra found solace in the routine of her daily life. She immersed herself in work, meticulously organized the heirlooms, and even started journaling about her grandmother's stories. Yet small incidents around the house began to strain her trust in Stephen. He was often moody and evasive, shrugging off her concerns about mounting credit card bills and ignoring her careful budgeting efforts. One evening, Cassandra returned from the grocery store to find Stephen pacing the living room. He mentioned a lucrative business opportunity that his friend had introduced, something about flipping collectibles for quick profit. Cassandra felt a chill run down her spine, sensing an invisible link between this new venture and her precious heirlooms. She tried to probe for details, but Stephen claimed he was just exploring options. Soon, subtle changes fueled her anxiety. The chest holding her grandmother's valuables seemed slightly off-center one day, and the lock appeared to have fresh scratches. Later, Cassandra noticed a small porcelain figurine was missing from its usual place. Stephen brushed off her worry, suggesting she had simply misplaced it. Cassandra wanted to believe him, but the seeds of doubt were already rooted, refusing to be easily uprooted. Cassandra's unease continued to grow when she began meticulously tracking every heirloom and discovered a pattern. A silver comb once cherished by her great-grandmother vanished. Then an antique cameo brooch disappeared. Each time, Stephen had a plausible explanation. Perhaps Cassandra had stored them elsewhere in her grief or given them away without remembering. His tone was reassuring, but there was a hollow ring to his words. Despite her misgivings, Cassandra hesitated to accuse her husband outright. She remembered how supportive he had been during Agnes's final days. Besides, she thought, he wouldn't dare betray something so sacred to me. Yet the nights she spent tossing and turning, running worst-case scenarios through her mind, told her otherwise. Desperate for reassurance, Cassandra tried to involve Stephen directly. She asked him to help her perform a thorough inventory of every heirloom. He obliged, albeit reluctantly, noting down items with a forced smile. But each time a piece turned up missing, Stephen claimed innocence, turning the tables and suggesting Cassandra might be too stressed to think clearly. These unsettling disappearances marked the beginning of a betrayal Cassandra never saw coming. It was a quiet storm brewing on the horizon, its dark clouds preparing to unleash havoc on her life. The moment of cruel revelation arrived one Saturday morning. Cassandra had slipped out to run errands, leaving Stephen at home. Upon returning, she saw him shutting the front door quickly behind a stranger, a tall man clad in a slick gray suit. Stephen's demeanor was nervous, his smile stiff. Before Cassandra could ask who the man was, Stephen muttered something about insurance adjustments and hurried off into another room. Uneasy, Cassandra decided to check the chest containing her grandmother's heirlooms. As she lifted the lid, an immediate emptiness struck her. Several prized items were missing, including the pocket watch. Her heart pounded, fury and sorrow churned inside her, leaving her both shaky and numb. She confronted Stephen, her eyes ablaze with suspicion. He tried to dodge her questions until she noticed a small slip of paper peeking out of his shirt pocket. When Cassandra snatched it, her worst fears were confirmed. It was a transaction receipt bearing the description of her missing heirlooms. She felt betrayed in a way she never imagined possible. In that single, devastating moment, Cassandra understood that the man she had entrusted with her heart had sold a piece of her very soul. Cassandra demanded answers, but Stephen responded with cool indifference. He insisted they needed the money, citing overdue mortgage payments and credit card debt. When she reminded him of the meticulous budget she kept, Stephen shrugged, nonchalantly explaining he needed extra funds for a business venture. Overwhelmed by betrayal and humiliation, Cassandra stared at the man she thought she knew, her tears hot with anger. She grabbed the receipt and stormed off to the bedroom, trembling as she dialed the number listed. An indifferent voice on the other end confirmed the purchase was part of a larger collection Stephen had recently sold. Cassandra's voice cracked as she asked if there was a return policy. The man sneered that antiques don't come cheap, especially not for regretful sellers or gullible wives. When she confronted Stephen again, he scoffed at her. "We're married," he said. "What's yours is mine, right?" His audacity stunned her. He stood there confidently, as if he had done nothing wrong. She felt a crushing sense of injustice, that the deep emotional bond she shared with her grandmother's legacy had been reduced to a financial transaction. At that moment, an icy determination took root in Cassandra's soul. In the days that followed, Cassandra grappled with a torrent of conflicting emotions. Her anger was tempered only by her disbelief. How could Stephen, the man she trusted, undermine her so profoundly? Each night, she cried into her pillow, mourning not only the lost heirlooms, but also the innocence of her marriage. Stephen's cavalier attitude toward her pain only fanned the flames of her resentment. He acted as though her reaction was overblown, insisting it was just stuff and that they could buy new trinkets one day. His dismissive stance eroded what little faith Cassandra clung to. In fleeting moments, she questioned whether she somehow deserved this. Had she ignored signs that might have prevented the betrayal? Her parents, still grieving Agnes in their own ways, sensed something was wrong. Cassandra refrained from telling them everything, not wanting to burden them further. Yet the distress was too palpable to hide. She felt humiliated by the thought that her own husband had so little regard for her feelings or family history. It was an emotional weight that threatened to crush her. But it also sparked a vow. Never again would she allow someone to treat her love and loyalty so cheaply. Determined to find a way forward, Cassandra turned to her closest friend, Lydia, for support. They met at a quaint cafe, a spot brightened by sunlight streaming through large windows. Over steaming cups of coffee, Cassandra finally laid bare the truth. Lydia listened with rapt attention, her face contorting with sympathy and outrage. By the time Cassandra finished recounting the deception, Lydia's hands were clenched around her mug, knuckles white. "How could he?" Lydia whispered fiercely, glancing around to ensure no one overheard. Cassandra shrugged, feeling a painful knot in her throat. She admitted her guilt for not trusting her instincts, for allowing Stephen's manipulative reassurances to overshadow the red flags. Lydia reached across the small table and grabbed Cassandra's hand, her tone firm. "You have every right to be angry. Don't let him convince you otherwise." With Lydia's encouragement, Cassandra resolved to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Perhaps the heirlooms could still be tracked down. If that proved impossible, she might at least safeguard whatever remained. More importantly, Lydia urged her to consult an attorney, a step Cassandra had not even considered. The thought of legal battles frightened her, but if it was necessary to protect her heritage and herself, then she'd do it. At first, Cassandra feared what seeking legal counsel might imply. She had always viewed marriage as a partnership built on trust and compromise, not court documents and potential lawsuits. However, desperation overcame her reservations. After researching local attorneys, she found Marie Delacroix, a reputable lawyer with a strong background in handling family disputes and property issues. Walking into Marie's office felt surreal. The walls were lined with law textbooks and accolades, reminders of the serious world Cassandra was about to enter. After carefully explaining her situation, her grandmother's heirlooms, the apparent theft, and her husband's brazen attitude, Marie listened with an empathetic yet professional gaze. Marie then asked pointed questions about finances, ownership, and the timeline of events. Cassandra stammered through her answers, realizing how little she had prepared. The attorney nodded, emphasizing that family heirlooms could be considered personal property if they were inherited solely by Cassandra. "He had no right to sell them without your explicit permission," Marie said firmly. Hearing those words gave Cassandra a flicker of hope. It felt validating to have a professional confirm her sense of injustice. But Marie also cautioned that Stephen might not cooperate easily, and the road ahead could be fraught with legal and emotional strife. Emboldened by Marie's assurance, Cassandra confronted Stephen with newfound resolve. Over dinner one evening, she laid out the facts. The heirlooms were hers alone, legally inherited. She demanded he return every piece he had sold or, at the very least, contact the buyers to negotiate buybacks. Stephen's response was a pointed sneer, followed by a half-hearted chuckle. "That's not happening," he declared, pushing his plate aside. He hinted that he might have used the money to invest in something bigger and better, a chance for them to improve their lives. When she pressed for details, his answers were evasive or laced with sarcasm. His flippant disregard for her emotional and legal stance lit a fire within Cassandra. No longer satisfied with his empty words, she calmly mentioned that she had sought legal advice. Stephen froze for a moment, surprise flashing across his face before he laughed derisively. "Good luck with that," he said, rising from his chair. "We're married. Everything's fair game." But Cassandra felt no fear now. She realized that even if their marriage had once been a safe harbor, it was now infested with deceit. He had thrown down the gauntlet, and she would pick it up without hesitation. With Stephen's challenge echoing in her mind, Cassandra took strategic steps to guard what remained of her inheritance. She meticulously photographed every antique left in her possession, noting each item's description and estimated value. Then, under Marie's guidance, she opened a separate safety deposit box at a nearby bank. One by one, she transferred the remaining heirlooms there, safely out of Stephen's reach. Doing so made her heart ache, a painful confirmation that her marriage was now an adversarial battleground. But each precautionary step helped her feel more in control, as if she was reclaiming a piece of the dignity Stephen had tried to steal. Meanwhile, Marie filed an injunction to prevent further sales of Cassandra's property. It was a bold legal move that signaled Cassandra's readiness to fight. Though the process was draining, a surprising calm settled over her each time she made another decisive move. The wheels of justice turned slowly, yet she clung to the hope that they would eventually grind Stephen's hubris to dust. Every evening, she locked herself in the spare room to journal about the day's events. It became her therapeutic outlet, a written chronicle of heartbreak and betrayal, but also of courage and an awakening sense of self-worth. Tension filled the house like a poisonous gas. Stephen spent more time out late, returning with alcohol on his breath and a smug look on his face. When he was home, the silence between him and Cassandra was suffocating. She would sometimes catch him fiddling with her bedside drawers or rummaging through closets, perhaps searching for more valuables to sell. Those moments fueled both her fury and her vigilance. At work, Cassandra struggled to concentrate. She often found herself drifting into daydreams, imagining reuniting with her lost heirlooms, or replaying Stephen's sneering words. Her boss, a kind woman named Rosalie, inquired about her well-being. Cassandra hesitated, unsure how much to divulge. She settled for a vague explanation about marital issues. Rosalie offered a sympathetic ear and flexible hours, providing a small beacon of kindness amid the chaos. Late at night, Cassandra lay awake, her mind swirling with conflicting visions, one of heartbreak and another of retribution. She yearned to see Stephen brought to his knees, to feel a sense of justice for Agnes's memory. And yet, sadness lingered. Part of her still remembered the early days of their relationship, the warmth and laughter. That love felt far away now, overshadowed by Stephen's betrayal and Cassandra's deepening resolve to fight back. Life continued in an uneasy stalemate until one day Cassandra stumbled upon a secret that ignited a newfound determination. While tidying the living room, she found a folder tucked beneath the couch cushions, labeled with Stephen's hasty scrawl. Inside were documents revealing a string of forged signatures, hers included, on various financial forms. Her stomach knotted. She saw credit applications under her name, expensive purchases labeled as joint assets, and even more disturbing, an intent to open a business venture that listed her as a partner without her knowledge. The final page showed a substantial loan approval, hinged on collateral that included household antiques. Cassandra's knees felt weak as she pieced it all together. Stephen had lied, forged, and manipulated in ways she never suspected. The scale of his betrayal stretched beyond the heirlooms themselves, capturing her financial future in a complex web of deceit. Instead of crumbling under the weight of these revelations, Cassandra felt a crystalline focus. This was the evidence she needed to prove, once and for all, that Stephen had violated her trust on every possible level. She snapped photographs of every page, carefully placing the originals back. Little did Stephen know, his own carelessness had handed Cassandra the ammunition for a devastating counterattack. Armed with proof of Stephen's forgeries, Cassandra arranged an urgent meeting with Marie. She entered the lawyer's office, her heart racing, the folder clutched tightly to her chest. Marie's eyes widened as she flipped through the incriminating papers. After carefully reviewing each one, she leaned back in her chair, a mixture of astonishment and resolve settling on her face. "Your husband has crossed a line," Marie said gravely. "This is no longer just about stolen property. It's now a matter of fraud and potentially criminal misconduct." Cassandra listened, her emotions a swirling cocktail of relief, anger, and anticipation. Marie explained they could use these documents as leverage in negotiation or even file criminal charges if Stephen refused to cooperate. The mere thought of bringing the law down on him felt both empowering and terrifying. She had never imagined her life spiraling into legal battles, but Stephen's actions left her no choice. Before she left, Marie offered a parting piece of advice. Be prepared for him to escalate. People like Stephen rarely go down without a fight. Cassandra nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. The fragile facade of normalcy at home was about to shatter completely, but she would meet whatever came next with unyielding resolve. That evening, Cassandra returned home with Marie's words echoing in her mind. Stephen was already there, seated on the couch with a bottle of whiskey. His eyes flicked toward her as she walked in, but he said nothing. The silence was thicker than ever. Quietly, she slipped into the spare room she had turned into her makeshift office. Anxiety gnawed at her, but she also felt an odd sense of power. If Stephen dared to taunt her again about selling off her heirlooms, she now possessed the legal and factual firepower to respond. Yet Cassandra knew she had to tread carefully. One rash move could provoke him to do something drastic, empty their joint accounts, or disappear with any remaining valuables. So, she decided to operate under a veil of normalcy. At least until Marie completed the necessary paperwork. She even forced herself to engage in casual conversations with Stephen, though each word felt unnatural on her tongue. Late into the night, Cassandra drafted a plan. She would gather every bank statement, every credit card bill, and every piece of evidence that might bolster her case. The next morning, she would quietly contact her bank to freeze any suspicious accounts. She was done being a victim. From here on out, she was preparing for a war. In the following days, Cassandra moved in stealth. She closed dormant joint accounts and redirected her paycheck into a newly opened personal account. Whenever Stephen asked about the mail or missing documents, she played it off with vague answers. Tension crackled in every interaction, but he seemed too preoccupied with his own schemes to notice her systematic approach. She also reached out to potential buyers of her heirlooms, armed with official letters Marie had prepared. Though many were uncooperative, a few signaled a willingness to negotiate a return if Cassandra reimbursed their purchase prices. Every conversation tightened the knot of resentment in her chest. She was essentially buying back pieces of her own family history, stolen by her husband. Meanwhile, Cassandra discovered that the porcelain figurine and silver comb were indeed in the hands of collectors. She arranged to meet them privately, anxious yet resolved to retrieve these cherished items. Each successful retrieval felt like a small victory, though it came with a financial toll. She used her savings, not wanting Stephen to get any trace of her transactions. Step by calculated step, Cassandra chipped away at Stephen's betrayal. With each recovered heirloom, she found not only a tangible piece of Agnes's memory, but also the fire that would fuel her final stand. Late one night, Cassandra sat at the kitchen table, going over her plans one last time. The overhead light cast harsh shadows, reflecting the darkness she felt in her heart. She had spoken to Marie earlier that day, finalizing the details of a major legal strike against Stephen. Tomorrow, they would serve him with legal documents outlining fraud allegations and demanding restitution for the stolen heirlooms. In the silence, Cassandra could hear Stephen's footsteps pacing upstairs. She wondered if he sensed the impending storm. Her determination was strong, but a sliver of sadness found its way in, reminding her of earlier years when they were happy. She pushed the thought away, reminding herself that he had squandered all the love and trust she'd once given him. Before heading to bed, she reviewed her evidence once more. The photos of the forged documents, the transaction receipts for the heirlooms, her grandmother's will stating the heirlooms were hers exclusively. Each page represented a betrayal, but together they formed a shield protecting her from Stephen's manipulations. Cassandra took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. Tomorrow, everything would change. She hoped that by this time next week, she'd no longer live under the same roof as the man who had shattered her faith in marriage and family. True to their plan, a process server arrived the next morning. Stephen answered the door with a cocky grin, only to have it replaced by stunned outrage when the server handed him the envelope containing the legal documents. Cassandra stood in the living room, arms crossed, observing his reaction with a detached calm she hadn't known she possessed. Stephen tore open the envelope and skimmed the contents, his face flushing an angry red. "Fraud?" he spat. "This is ridiculous." He stormed toward Cassandra, waving the papers in her face. For the first time, she didn't flinch. She met his gaze, her eyes cold with fury. "You forged my signature. You sold my heirlooms," she said, her voice unwavering. "This isn't just me talking, it's the law." Snarling, Stephen hurled the papers onto the coffee table. He threatened counter-lawsuits, insisted he'd tie her up in legal battles until she was bankrupt. Cassandra refused to be intimidated. Behind her, a calm and resolute voice inside reminded her that she had prepared for this exact reaction. A day that began with a tense confrontation would conclude with Cassandra feeling a surprising relief. The time for secrecy had passed. Now, every card was on the table, and she was ready to play her winning hand. That same afternoon, Cassandra packed a small suitcase. She couldn't stomach another night under the same roof. Her plan was to stay with Lydia until the legal dust settled. If Stephen tried to block her path, she would have no qualms about calling the police. But when she stepped into the living room, she found him there, brooding on the sofa, staring at the legal documents as though they were traitors. Seeing her suitcase, he scoffed. "Running away, Cassandra?" His tone was laced with mockery, but she noticed a hint of desperation in his eyes. She said nothing, merely walked past him toward the door. In a last-ditch effort, he tried to grab her arm. She spun around, fixing him with a glare so fierce he let go instantly. "You made this choice when you betrayed me," she said softly, her voice tinged with sadness and finality. "I'm done." Leaving the house felt both terrifying and liberating. Cassandra could sense the weight lifting off her shoulders with each step. She had no idea what the future held, whether she would regain every heirloom or watch Stephen face legal consequences. But she knew one thing: she would never again allow him to control her life. Lydia welcomed Cassandra into her home with open arms, transforming her cozy guest room into a safe haven. By this time, Cassandra was emotionally drained, but also resolute. While Stephen bombarded her phone with calls and texts laced with blame and threats, she blocked his number and directed all communication through Marie. In the days that followed, Cassandra began to piece together a new routine. She worked remotely when possible, finding solace in the swirl of spreadsheets and projects that demanded her full attention. During breaks, she and Lydia would share bits of laughter over old memories, a balm for Cassandra's battered spirit. Marie kept Cassandra updated on the legal process. Stephen's lawyer initially tried to belittle the fraud claims, calling them exaggerations by an emotional spouse. However, the pile of evidence, including Stephen's own forged signatures and misappropriated sales, quickly shattered that facade. For the first time, Cassandra sensed that justice was within reach. Though Stephen's betrayal still throbbed like a deep bruise, Cassandra felt a stirring sense of freedom. She even retrieved more heirlooms, meeting with reluctant buyers who were forced to return items to avoid tangling with a growing legal maelstrom. Each piece she reclaimed was a symbolic victory, a bright thread of hope in her ever-evolving tapestry of resilience. It wasn't until she recovered her grandmother's pocket watch, the one most dear to her heart, that Cassandra truly began to heal. She drove an hour outside the city to a small antiques shop where the current owner had reluctantly agreed to surrender it. When she finally held the watch again, its etched initials glinting in the light, she felt Agnes's comforting presence. Driving back, tears blurred her vision, but they weren't tears of helplessness. They were tears of triumph. She realized that every step she had taken, every piece of evidence, every confrontation, had led her to this moment of reclamation. The watch was more than a family heirloom. It was a tangible reminder that her heritage, her love, and her worth could not be erased by Stephen's greed. That evening, Cassandra placed the watch in a small glass case Lydia had gifted her, setting it gently on a shelf in the guest room. She ran her fingers over the smooth glass, imagining Agnes's proud smile. She still felt the sting of betrayal, but it was no longer a defining wound. If anything, it was the catalyst that revealed her strength and guided her toward a future free from Stephen's poisonous control. Marie soon informed Cassandra that Stephen was on the brink of financial collapse. His fraudulent activities had spread further than Cassandra initially realized, leaving him entangled in multiple lawsuits. With his finances frozen and his reputation tarnished, Stephen had little leverage left. His attorney reached out to Marie, practically begging to negotiate a settlement. The proposed deal involved the return of any unsold heirlooms and full compensation for items Stephen couldn't retrieve. Additionally, he would cover Cassandra's legal fees. In exchange, Cassandra would drop any criminal charges related to the forgeries. Marie read the terms aloud in her office while Cassandra sat quietly, thinking about all the pain Stephen had caused. "Do you want to press criminal charges?" Marie asked gently. Cassandra hesitated. The temptation to watch him face criminal sentencing for forging her signature and dismantling her family's legacy was intense. However, she also yearned for finality, for a chance to close this chapter and move on with her life. After a lengthy pause, Cassandra sighed. "If he compensates for the lost heirlooms fully and signs over everything we agreed upon, I'll withdraw the criminal complaint." Her voice was calm, but a stern resolve underpinned each syllable. She would accept the settlement, but Stephen's life would never be the same, and that felt like justice. News of the settlement spread quickly among Cassandra's circle. Lydia, Rosalie from work, and even her parents learned of the outcome. While some encouraged her to pursue harsher punishments, Cassandra stood firm in her decision. She had fought tooth and nail to preserve Agnes's memory and protect her future. Now, with the settlement in place, she saw a chance to rebuild her life without the shadow of an ongoing legal battle. Stephen, for his part, tried to reach out directly. Letters in the mailbox, apologetic voicemails, even flowers delivered to Lydia's doorstep. Cassandra's first instinct was anger. How dare he attempt to apologize after all he had done? Eventually, though, she felt only pity. His desperation dripped from every plea. He stood to lose nearly everything he once cherished, from financial stability to the comfort of a stable home. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Cassandra visited the bank to finalize paperwork for the settlement funds. She signed the documents with steady hands, feeling an odd blend of relief and sorrow. Each stroke of her pen was another step away from the heartbreak that had consumed her. If there was one victory in all of this, it was that she had reclaimed her own life, anew and unbroken. Returning to the bungalow where her grandmother once lived, Cassandra stepped onto the familiar porch. Her parents had since leased it to a small family, but they granted her permission to visit occasionally. She stood in the garden, remembering the afternoons spent with Agnes tending to the roses. The new tenants kept the garden in bloom, vibrant petals swaying in a gentle breeze. Cassandra clutched the pocket watch in her palm, feeling the tick of its mechanism resonate against her skin. She pictured Agnes standing beside her, warm smile and gentle laugh. A wave of gratitude washed over her, for she had somehow navigated the darkest betrayal of her life and emerged not unscathed, but certainly stronger. In a moment of reflection, she knelt to touch the soil where Agnes had once planted bulbs. "I did it, Grandma," she whispered. "I fought back." Her voice wavered, but resolve underpinned each word. She thought of the settlement, the heirlooms she had recovered, and the new direction her life was taking. Although the scars of Stephen's betrayal would remain, they were also reminders of her resilience and capacity for love, even when love had been twisted by another's greed. The final chapter of Cassandra's ordeal began with her decision to sell the home she had once shared with Stephen. As per the settlement, Stephen had no claim to it once she exercised her legal rights to sole ownership. With the market in her favor, she received several competitive offers. She accepted one that allowed her to pay off any lingering debts and set aside a substantial fund for her future. On the day the sale closed, she walked through the empty rooms, each echoing with memories, both sweet and bitter. She placed her hand on a bare wall and breathed a soft goodbye, knowing she would never return. The life she once had here was gone, replaced by a sense of liberation as expansive as the open door leading out. Freed from both marriage and the weight of betrayal, Cassandra moved into a sunlit apartment downtown. She arranged the recovered heirlooms on shelves, each piece gleaming with renewed significance. It was a quiet victory, a testament that love, legacy, and personal dignity could not be extinguished by someone else's betrayal. Friends visited often, bringing laughter and warmth to her new space. In the end, Stephen faced the karmic tide he had sowed: financial ruin, social isolation, and a tarnished name. Cassandra never looked back. She had taken back what was stolen from her: family treasures, self-respect, and a bright future. Her grandmother's heirlooms now stood as symbols of hard-won triumph and unwavering resilience, shining reminders that even in the wake of gut-wrenching betrayal, one could emerge strong, intact, and ready to embrace life anew.